If you dare, the new haunted house ride at Alton Towers.
Some zombies are armed and they may shoot back, so prepare to duel.
The idea of building a haunted house attraction at Alton Towers came about in 1990, when Alton Towers realised that the perception of the park was that it was a place for teens and young adults. Park management wanted to come up with a way of attracting more families to the park, aware of the fact that Disneyland Paris, known then as Euro Disney, was set to open in 1992 and posed tough competition. To attract more families to Alton Towers, the Two Swords Group, then owner of the parks, set to work on a plan to try and make the park more family-friendly. The first part of the plan included the construction of the runaway mine train and the creation of the Katanga Canyon area. The second part was the construction of the Gloomy Woods, with the crown jewel set to be the Haunted Mansion. The Gloomy Woods was to be a self-sufficient area located between Katanga Canyon and Thunder Valley, now Forbidden Valley. Alongside the Haunted Mansion, Towers built a gift shop called Something Sinister and a food kiosk called Wicked Things. Both remain today, with the shop now called Spooks R Us, and the food kiosk has gone through multiple changes since it was first built. Originally, the food kiosk was planned to be an open-sided game station, but this never came to be. The haunted house was the brainchild of John Wardley, the legendary Alton Towers ride designer. In 1990, he believed that he needed to create the ultimate dark ride, one which exceeded any other attraction in the UK or Europe. At the time, lots of theme parks were simply creating third-rate copies of Disney attractions, but Wardley wanted to build an attraction far more impressive. Wardley already had some experience designing ghost train-style attractions, as in the 1970s he had worked on the refurbishment of the old ghost train at Barry Island in South Wales, turning it into Uncle Frankenstein's Scream Machine. John delivered his plans to the Two Swords Group and shared his ideas with Keith Sparks, the head of Sparks Creative Services, a group that had considerable experience at designing and creating dark rides. In fact, at this time, they had just finished creating the iconic attraction Professor Burp's Bubble Works at Chessington World of Adventures. In the 90s, most ghost trains across Europe still had two-seater cars, and the majority of their scares consisted of loud noises and flashing lights. Wardley wanted the Alton Towers Haunted House to be far more than just this. The first ever dark ride at Alton Towers was a travelling haze ghost train, which was built in the 60s. However, this ghost train was only temporarily housed at the Towers, as it was owned by Brian Collins, the man who operated the temporary fair on site before Alton Towers became an actual theme park. The first permanent dark ride to be built at Alton Towers was Around the World in 80 Days. This attraction was built by Mack Rides and opened in 1982. A year prior, Alton Towers opened their first permanent haunted attraction, Doom and Sons. It was a walkthrough with illusions, interactive features, and sensory effects. Both of these attractions were located in the same building and were eventually replaced by the famous boat ride Toyland Tours, which opened in 1994. Wardley's desire was for the haunted house ride to carry a sense of surprise. However, utilisation of the popular dark ride system of the time, the Omnimover, would make it hard to create surprise, as this ride system allows guests to see what's happening to the cars in front before they experience it themselves. The solution to this problem was a bespoke ride transit system built by Mack Rides, which was designed to allow a high throughput whilst leaving the cars to travel the ride separately and at varying speeds in different areas. The carriages travel through the station at a speed of 0.2 meters per second and then enter the ride, speeding up to 1 meter a second and then 2 meters a second deeper in. The separation of ride vehicles as they travel at different speeds adds fear to the attraction, as it makes riders feel more alone and vulnerable. This ride system is so complex that it remains the only one ever built. The ride's carriages were also built by Mack Rides and were designed to look like church pews. Each carriage cost £18,000 and the ride can run 32 cars on the track at one time. Each carriage is fitted with an onboard computer that interprets information from the electric track, allowing the cars to speed up and slow down. Construction of the attraction began on the 11th of March 1991. The house facade is a mixture of Victorian Gothic architecture and Hammer horror style theming. Construction on the facade was completed in late October 1991 and was built by Mike Blackman's Scenic Construction Company. The designs for the facade changed a few times before Wardley settled on the design we all know and love today. The original design of the facade had Georgian influences and featured more stone architecture. On the original design, you can see a large oak door on the right tower, which was set to be the entrance to the bathrooms, which were going to be built under the facade rather than behind the shop where they were eventually built. For its time, the attraction's show building was so big that the ride designers had to take extra precautions when planning the ride's evacuation routes. To ensure guests could safely evacuate from the centre of the building in an emergency, a fireproof corridor was built to allow guests to quickly exit. The ride building was built upon boggy marshland. The land lacked drainage, and there were concerns that the 300 square metre building could end up trapping the methane gas which the land naturally produces, so ventilation and methane sensors had to be incorporated into the building. During the latter stages of construction, many workers on site complained that unexplainable and unexpected incidents would occur. These reports became so notable that a local TV station even sent down a reporter to investigate. The story was given even more credence when an Alton Towers representative told the press that there was a legend dating back many years of a young woman murdered near the spot where the attraction was now being built. Nearer the ride's opening, Alton Towers were quick to market the supposedly real hauntings and brought to life the ghost of Sir Henry Alton, a flamboyant nobleman and close friend of Charles I, who lost his head in a peasant revolt in the 1600s. Henry's head also appeared from time to time within the fire under the fireplace in the ride's queue. To record this effect, the role of Sir Henry was actually played by Keith Sparks.
Are your furtive, frightened minds playing tricks inside your brain?
Many of you who have experienced the ride will be aware of the little girl who hangs out in the dollhouse in the queue. This is in fact Emily Alton. The role of Emily was played by 10-year-old Lucy Webb, daughter of 1980s TV personality David Webb. Within the drawing room section of the queue, a cross-stitch made by Emily hangs on the wall, warning you not to look into the fire. Emily could also be heard singing in the queue. This effect was removed in 2003. The original portraits in the drawing room were painted by artists Alan Harvey and Nigel Webb, who worked for Rex Studios, a company that was involved in the construction of the haunted house. However, unknown to Alton Towers, the artwork was inspired by pictures in several books, including Echoes of Terror, Blood and Iron, and the Dracula collection. However, over time, one of the artists of these original pictures was made aware of these paintings and felt that it was not right for Alton Towers to be using these images. These original portraits were removed and replaced during the 2003 refurb. They were again replaced in 2018 by digital changing portraits. The ride opened on the 30th of March 1992, the same day as the Runaway Mine Train, and garnered a lot of attention, with it quickly becoming a must-do attraction for most visitors to the park. When it opened, it was the largest ghost train ride in the whole of Europe. The task of opening the ride was given to TV presenter Philip Schofield, with the help of Sir Henry Alton, Radio 1, and other celebrities of the time, including Jeff Capes, Michael Strachan, Daniela Westbrook, and Andy Crane.
I think, ladies and gentlemen, it is about time to declare this magnificent ride open.
On opening day, the haunted house had a few teething problems, which delayed the opening ceremony. The carriages were not keeping within the blocks that were set by the computer system. This caused the ride to come to a standstill every time another carriage entered the same section as the carriage in front. This problem was solved on the day by using staff dressed in undertaker's clothing manning the cars, ready to push the override button within the car's computer system. This kept the ride moving for the day until the actual issue could be fixed. After the ride had been open for a few months, several scenes originally covered in UV paint were repainted, as Towers believed the UV effect made these scenes look more magical than scary. By 2002, after 10 years of operation, many of the original scenes had been altered by the park on an ad hoc basis, and many of the ride's effects were in dire need of refurbishment. The park decided that at the end of the 2002 season, it was time to refurb the ride. Towards the end of this season, a poster was placed outside the haunted house, advertising the new name and opening date, along with the slogan, "Whatever you do, don't miss. Jewel, the haunted house strikes back." Neither John Wardley or any other members of the 1992 team were involved in the revamp of the attraction. It was decided that the ride was to become an interactive shooter-style attraction. The job of making the ride interactive was given to Megazone. While retrofitting laser targets to existing dark rides often makes for an ugly disaster, Jewel is one of the more successful attempts. Ride scenes are covered in small green LED lights. When these are shot at, they turn red, and the rider's score, displayed on their individual scoreboard inside the ride vehicle, is increased. Hidden in some less obvious places throughout the ride are yellow lights, which are worth extra bonus points. A new soundtrack was composed by David Buckley, which played on a loop throughout the ride and replaced the original 8 tracks, produced by Graham Smart. The ride soundtrack was again altered for the start of the 2018 season. Towers also added a new storyline, revolving around zombies taking over the house. The story went that Jewel the Haunted House Strikes Back takes riders on an adventure deep inside Alton Towers' haunted house. The house owner, a genetic surgeon, has vanished after conducting experiments attempting to bring the dead back to life. His work appears to have succeeded, as the undead are rising from their graves and inhabiting his former home. The story goes that guests are being sent inside as part of a crack team to find out exactly what is going on. There will be up-close encounters with zombies who are not happy about being disturbed. Prepare to duel. Upon entering the haunted house, the queue winds through a pre-show set, depicting a darkly lit Victorian entrance hall and drawing room. Originally, this scene featured a number of haunted illusions, accompanied by themed aroma and ambiance. The second room was also slanted at an angle to disorientate guests as they walk through. As already mentioned, many of the illusions featured in this room were removed or altered in the 2003 refurbishment. In the station, riders board one of the vehicles, which seat 3 people in the front and 2 in the back. Originally, the vehicles also sat 3 in the back, but the middle seat was removed to create space to holster the guns. After leaving the loading area, the vehicles accelerate away from one another to take the carriages into the scenes individually. The The first scene takes riders past cracking stone walls that appear to move with the sound of thunder. This leads to the Grand Hall, where a stone bus jumps out at riders. This effect was added to the ride in 2003. Entering a seemingly empty hallway, suddenly a large demon appears overhead between two columns. This effect was originally achieved with a parallel mirror illusion and timed lighting. Following the dual refurbishment, the original timed lighting was removed, revealing the mirrors and the demon as it pivots out from its start position. The car then swerves right into a dark corner where the demon reappears holding a knife and a large rat. The car then travels into a stone chamber and turns to face a large skull-shaped effigy, passing flickering flambeau torches. Through the skull's mouth is a large rotating trommel, also known as a vortex tunnel, which gives riders the sensation of being turned upside down. For many years now, the tunnel has been switched off and replaced by strobe lighting effects. A zombie jump scare was added to shock riders before entering the tunnel. Since the dual changeover, the splitting head originally located later in the ride was moved to the end of the tunnel. The vehicle continues down a stone passage with large Gothic windows either side. Zombies reach out from the windows towards riders. Before 2003, in the place of the zombies, were large fang-toothed ghouls. The car then passes the largest window, behind which ghosts appear to move. Originally, this scene featured giant hands reaching through the windows, then a giant staring face. The next scene is in a dark chamber, where multiple zombies jump out at riders, before weaving past large spiders. The scene ends with a giant-sized spider suspended overhead. Riders then enter a corridor, where a skeleton pulls a lever on a fuse box, turning out the lights. This scene, as originally built, featured a large phantom that appeared from behind riders and flew overhead down a track. This was removed after its first year, and a new scene featuring skeletons replaced it in 1993. Many of the effects were hidden by Gore's scrims to reveal each small scene with a lighting change as the car passed. Features of this included a skeleton on a toilet and a skeleton with a bomb. Several years later, some of these effects and the set were removed. It has remained this way since, other than when a witch was added in 2003. The car then turns through a series of tight bends in the dark as ghoulish heads appear to fly overhead using a UV strobe effect. Riders then travel into a garden at night, at which point the car slows down. A crashed hearse can be seen ahead, with an undertaker gesturing to come closer. A ghost is seen flying out of the open coffin inside the hearse. This is created using a Pepper's ghost effect. Further into the garden, a laughing troll leaps out from a small cave on the right. A statue of the Grim Reaper stands at the end of the garden as riders pass under an archway. A part-collapsed column comes into view behind this arch, which unexpectedly turns to reveal a tall, thin demon shrieking inside. From here, the cars accelerate to full speed and pass through open doors into the finale. The car winds through an industrial basement where multiple zombies appear from barrels, windows, and overhead on gantries. This scene replaced the original finale, in which riders turned through a rocky gorge as serpentine creatures and possessed faces appeared from the rocks and overhead. For the 2008 and 2009 Scarefest at Alton Towers, the ride became host to Duel Live. This attraction featured live actors located in different scenes around the ride to scare riders. The laser guns and all the LEDs were switched off, so that riders were not distracted by the shooting and focused on the ride. The music was replaced throughout the ride with a different, more atmospheric piece. Duel Live also utilised the original outdoor queue line, with actors roaming the wooded area. For the 2008 version, the queue featured grave diggers and werewolves creeping up on guests. In 2009, this was reduced to just one actor in a hooded robe. Guests waited at the door instead of walking straight in before being greeted by either a maid or a butler. The performers alternated during the 2009 version, but in 2008 only the butler featured. Bagrita gave a brief talk about what was inside and why the guns were switched off. The TV screens in the drawing room were covered with cloth and muted, and the original spooky music was turned up. During the 2008 event, the maid jumped out at guests as they entered the drawing room. During 2008's Scarefest, Jewel ran as normal during the morning and afternoon before switching over to Jewel Live after 3 PM. It featured approximately 4 live actors throughout the ride. In 2009, Jewel Live ran all day with about 8 different actors on the ride. In 2010, instead of Jewel Live, the attraction was renamed Skelvin's Haunted Adventure and was based around the park's Halloween mascots, particularly the character Skelvin. Since 2010, Jewel has operated as normal during Scarefest. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Also, let me know what version of the ride you preferred, and check out my website and social media, all linked below.